everyone. Good afternoon, and welcome to episode 36 of A Girl Like Me Live, where every month we go live and we speak to different women from the community about different issues that are relative to what we are going through as women living with HIV. So I'm so excited for this episode today. This one is so important, and I catch myself in it all the time. And this is the power of language. So amplifying wellness for women living with HIV. And I'm so excited to be joined today by Aryah Lester, and I will let you have a moment to introduce yourself. Let us know who you are and what brings you to this conversation today.
Hi everyone, I'm Aryah. I'm a board member at the Well Project. I'm originally from New York, Queens, Far Rockaway, for those of you who know. But I lived all over the East Coast. Basically, I lived in Georgia during my teenage years. I went back to New York. I went to Florida, and in Florida, I started the first trans organization in the state of Florida in Miami back in like 2012. And yeah, my advocacy has led me to be an advocate for those that have, suffered through things just as I have and my community has and Black women have. And so, yeah, it's good to be here.
Oh, I'm so excited for you to be here. And you was just naming all those places you from, and I'm thinking about like how people talk in different places and how you just have to adapt to the language. And so like sometimes, not sometimes, all the time, that adaptation comes when I'm dealing with my HIV status. I've had to learn how to talk differently about
Mhm.
myself in this status over the past 17 years. Um so we'll just jump into questions. Just jump in questions.
Yeah, let's do it.
Bridges in the comments talking about do the Rockaway.
Yes.
But how have you observed language affecting the self perception and self identity of women living with HIV? Your own self.
Well, even growing up, you realize how people talk to you and the terms that they use influence how you see yourself, right? So, um, I mentioned that I was in Georgia. A lot of people don't know this, but I was a Jehovah's Witness. So I was going like, door to door to door. I think my first instance of negative language was going, I think I was like maybe 11, 12, and, walked up to somebody's door and it came out, it was a older white guy with a rifle and pointing and say you got 5 seconds to get away from my door, niggas, and that was my first instance of coming against a word that had so much negativity layered on it. And then it's surprising when you get into the healthcare kind of world and realm to find that there's words like that even in there within professional spaces. And not all providers are educated when it comes to what type of language to use, or using neutral languages. And I've encountered some experiences myself in the past of, you know, from health providers of language being something that really needed to be worked on, you know.
Mhm.
um, like, for example, there was a physician's assistant that I would have to go see through my insurance. And this was right after I had got diagnosed. Um, and he was asking me what type of sex that I had, and being that I had engaged in anal sex at that time, he was like, "Well, we have to classify you as a man with secret men then, because your biology, is this, and you're having sex with men." And so therefore that's what we're putting into the system. And then mind you, this is a gay guy too. And it just to being termed that at the same place where you're trying to get your care, or going to a physician. You have some physicians that are versed and educated when it comes to HIV. And then there's others who aren't whatsoever, and misusing the term AIDS when you're supposed to be saying HIV, or those terms of we saw HIV infected for like years and years and years, and to have that kind of dote on your persona as far as like you're an infection, you're infected, or even the flip side of that, going on dating sites and stuff, and they're like, I'm clean. So, and it's like, well, I guess that makes me dirty. Like, so yeah, there's a lot of instances, especially when you're black, when you're a woman, of things like that coming up.
Absolutely. I mean, you just said so many things. I'm thinking of like equating some of the language that you feel to the N word, like in how we can all, most of us can relate it, how bad that feels when someone uses it towards you in a negative way. And so we can relate there, but because other people are not, everyone isn't living with HIV, so they don't understand life through that lens. To hear something like dirty, yeah, that makes me feel it hits me in my gut just the same way as some of this other terminology that we can, agree on that is offensive. I I've always attributed my language shift and change to those that were around me, because for 10 years of navigating my diagnosis, I was the only person around. So I was just depending on me and the providers. Like, however they felt about HIV was how I felt about HIV.
Mhm.
It was through their language that I got to develop a relationship with this virus and myself. So terms like HIV infected, like, that's what they called me. So yeah, I'm infected with HIV. Yes, and Lynette is the first one that pointed it out. She was like, "Oh, that cringes when you say infected," but this is what I had been reading. This is what I hear them refer to me as, or something like promiscuous. Being promiscuous is why you have HIV. And I took that on. That was me attempting to take some accountability. But no, that's not what was going on, and that behavior is not how I ended up with an HIV diagnosis. So like I had to take a step back, and it was only because of other people around me who had learned better and who were attempting to do better that I was able to learn for my own self, and then I could take that back to the other folks around me. And that's sort of how it works. But we can't be resistant to that change. And I've seen a lot of resistance, because folks have been doing this work for a long time. People have been, living with this virus for a while, and maybe they're just stuck in their ways. But I would like to advocate for some changes in this language. I know we all are advocating for that.
You know what? I think it's a lot to do with casting judgment on someone else. And I think when this language is utilized, it comes from that person's internal struggle with judging you or judging me. Like using that word infected is kind of like saying, well, I'm not infected, and you are infected. Or that a promiscuity, type of thing when we have people that were born with HIV. We have people that got it, from contaminated blood, from, whatever type of situation, like with needles, or something like that. And me myself, it was through sexual assault. It wasn't through sex agreed upon by two parties and just having it be unsafe. You know, um, but they want to take that judgment of what they think people living with HIV are, and use their kind of words and language to throw that judgment on you. And I think I had to kind of separate myself from how other people think.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I've I've been learning. It's definitely been a journey over the past few bunches of years. And I even like, staying on top of what language is appropriate or what is, and even as a person living with HIV, sometimes I get caught up. I posted a video the other day on social media, and I used the term serodiscordant couple. That's how I learned the terminology, was serodiscordant. But there is better language out there. Someone pointed out to me in the comment section, it was like, I they use a term like magnetic couple, but they was like serodiscordant makes it sound like we're fighting. I was like, you're right. It does make us sound like we're fighting. And so the Well Project has a really good fact sheet on different partners. The language changes, and as I learned and we pick up, I know that when I got into the advocacy space, there's something like the group of women that I had met that were born with HIV. I was first introduced to them as perinatals. So that was the term that I was using until someone came to me. They was like, we don't like that. I don't even know who picked that term out for it. I thought that this was an agreed. So once I learned the language, then we learned that they're lifetime survivors, or we have them referred to as dandelions. Like, as it changes, we must be willing to move forward, because you don't get to pick the language that you're going to use to describe me, like to me, in front of me, about me. You don't get to do that. And I think that's really important. People should be able to claim how they want to be referred to.
It's about words used to describe a part of you and not using words that try to define who you
That's deep. That's deep. Say it again. We might put it on a t-shirt.
are. Words that are used to define words that are used to describe a part of you as opposed to words that are used to define you.
Mhm, mhm. And that I've had to do so much of that unpacking within myself, so that even like when I show up in spaces and when I hear it, that I'm empowered to say something about it. I'm empowered to correct, or not correct. I feel more responsibility to do it in healthcare spaces, because I don't know how the person behind me, like, if you talking to me like this, how are you treating the other folks that come behind me? And I feel like that's where a lot of my advocacy space lives, is for other folks. So
Or how your day is talking about you after you leave the office. you know.
sometimes they can't even sometimes they can't even wait till you leave the office. I like that that describe versus define. She said you better say it.
Mm-hmm.
You better say it.
Thank you, Bridget.
Um and then where else was I trying to go? So, in what ways can choosing positive or empowering language enhance experiences as we're living with HIV and navigating the healthcare system?
Well, it's taking away that stigma. Stigma is something that is external but also internal. We convert those negative terms into a stigmatization of ourselves. If you keep hearing infected and clean versus dirty, and you know, it kind of makes you feel less of a person because you're living with a virus that, you know, you don't see that when it comes to diabetes. Diabetes is something that a person will have to have regular care for, regular checks, going to the doctor, the same thing as HIV, but yet we don't really define somebody with their diabetes. I can maybe think of one example of like a Medea play with it, like diabetical, you know. But other than that, it's not a forward part of that person's persona, you know. And when you start getting more positive language, then you start living more positively with HIV, and not feeling that you have to blame yourself for anything that happened, or just have a better love of yourself and a better acceptance of, okay, if I manage and care for this, then I think I've heard somebody say HIV is living with me. I'm not living with HIV.
Mhm, mhm.
And I think hearing more of those positive words kind of veers you more towards that type of kind of living and becoming, as opposed to the negative ways of
Like, I can do this. I can do this. And I need more of that. Like, come, I know that if my first doctor's appointment, if it wasn't for that nurse that I had in there that day, she was just so kind and so loving, and the words that she chose to use were words that, like, it made me feel like I could do it. It made me feel like I didn't feel the negative, nasty connotations of like what I thought HIV or that first appointment was going to be. It was so bright. Like, she had on bright lipstick. I remember everything about that. And that set the tone for how I have navigated this diagnosis since then. Um, and it's not always easy. And that's, leaning on each other and leaning on community, and, but that doctor's office is so important. I just got a call the other day, and sometimes it's not just the words, like, sometimes it's all of the things together. So, trying to apply to a program the other day, they had to call and verify, income and all of it. And so, like, what's your highest level of education? So I was like, I'm working on a doctorate. And he goes, so I assume you own your house then? No, sir, I don't own my house. Now I feel really bad about the fact that I don't own my house. Like, you just made so many assumptions because you were able to put me in one box here. So that means that the next box must be true too. Instead of taking each of those questions, each of those pieces of identity as one singular independent thing. Now, I just felt like that could have been so much different, but I ain't feel like advocating. Sometimes you don't feel like advocating.
it. Yeah, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Sometimes
Mm-hmm.
you just let them go ahead and do it, get away with it. And then how do you walk away from that experience? Like, are you whole? Do you feel like you, I don't know, have, I really just let them talk to me like that. When I think about all the time after I let that man sit there and tell me that all my kids was going to be orphans. Like, I really sat there and let that doctor talk to me like that. And how, like, have I been spending my whole entire life trying to prove that doctor wrong? I never thought about it, but that was something that lived with me. Like, no, I can't. And it makes me angry that you would even ever talk to anybody like that. Whew.
Yeah,
Um,
that's a good way of putting it. Cause like, think about social media. I mean, we all have profiles and stuff, and I know that each one of us can remember a negative comment that somebody said either in our profile or as a DM or something, and we also probably have hundreds of positive comments, but that one negative I remember I was on this dating site, and this was years ago, maybe 2010, and a girl said that I looked like a cocker spaniel.
Oh,
And I think it was because of how my hair was too, and she was a hater, and and all this other stuff. But it was like I still remember that one little comment, out like over a decade ago. And so, like you said, we hear certain things, and like you had said, of have you been spending the rest of your life trying to prove that comment wrong? That's just how we absorb things as humans, which is why we have to be more careful with each other of the language that we do use, because that language that person can carry it for a long time.
mm, mm, mm. And like I think it's, in so many ways it's like we're building the airplane as we're flying it, when it comes to this HIV response. And as Bridget said, if we don't know better, we can't do better. Um being a having the opportunity to be a part of like some research projects and some stuff, going back and doing literature reviews and looking at older articles and older research studies that were written up around HIV. Yo, some of that language just got it punch. And I can't imagine, living with HIV back then, taking a medication that was unsure, your people not making it, all of that. And then this is how you're being referred to. It just, looking at that piece of history and the evolution of language, I'm like, oh my God, I have just a different respect for so many of our long-term survivors, because how do you make it? How do we have, someone like Ray Lewis Thornton on the front of a magazine where it's like AIDS or whatever that caption was? It was that sorry, like I want to read this comment. Like, when someone told me no one would ever want me with HIV and multiple children. And then what happens is people still start wanting you with HIV and multiple children, and you gotta, in your mind, we gotta figure that out. Like, I still remember this comment, but that isn't my reality. So am I going to feed into like irrational thoughts? Was that just an opinion?
Mm.
You know, I don't know.
Well, I'm glad you took it back to like the inception, because that's kind of where we got the stigma from, was the medical mishandling of understanding the virus when it first came out. Whatever that term was that they had for it, that was specifically like a gay man's disease, and this was during a time where there wasn't a lot of education out there, and there was a lot of stigma when it comes to gay and homosexual people. And so that's where we first get, it being ascribed and attached to sex, to go all the way to now of someone calling you promiscuous, and that's why you got it. That comes from that initial kind of how they looked at gay people and gay culture, and then looking at this virus and having the wrong assumptions and putting those assumptions together in medical papers, um, that we're still kind of fighting and trying to erase even now. So, definitely language evolves.
Oh, and being I don't know, a newer advocate. I still am a newer advocate. Um, Coming in and being able to see, I came in and it just seemed like things were so great in a sense. I don't know. We were making so much progress in areas. Like, we were getting like really inclusive language and starting to like bring people into the room. And then overnight, it just seems like so many things had to change, and particularly if you're dependent on like government funds and stuff, it's no longer women and parents, is now just women, or it's no longer breast and chest feed and it's just breastfeeding. And it's like, dang, like, no matter how I came to this work, I have definitely opened my eyes and learned and made it an intentional desire of mine to continue to learn. And like, no, this is wrong. We worked, and do y'all know how long this took for us to get here? And now you're going to move us what feels like 10 steps backwards, which doesn't, that's not helping us get to the end of this. That's not helping people feel loved and want to continue to live this hard life. Like, what are we doing? What are we doing?
That's why language, just these types of conversations should be a course for medical professionals, before they're able to get their degrees and get licensed, or for social workers, peer navigators. Anyone who works in the public health system should be required to take a course, not just on respectability, but also on that evolution of language, how stigmatizing language can be, and what things to avoid, but also that consistent and constant learning of like how different terms kind of go out of style and new ones come in.
So I like the U equals you. That's when I first heard of that campaign, I was like, yo, this is amazing. Because before then I'm dating and I'm having to tell partners what my provider told me. My provider told me that as long as I take my medicine, then there's less than a 2% chance that I'll be able to transmit HIV. But 2% still sounds like a lot of percent when you're talking about HIV because of stigma. Ain't nobody living with HIV gonna hear that it's a 2% chance that I could be transmitted this, and I'm still going to want to move forward without questions. So having some framing around it, like U equals you, undetectable equals untransmittable. I'm now able to say confidently because this is something backed by my provider, researchers, science, all of that that says that if I'm taking my medication and I'm undetectable, then I can't transmit it sexually. Then that changed the game for real. That changed the whole conversation that I was able to have with a potential partner, or when I'm advocating or trying to empower another person that life is not over because you have this diagnosis now. Language matters so much. I can't stress that enough. We can't stress that enough. I've seen a couple comments pop up that I'm gonna go back to. So Olivia said that part, understanding the evolution and power of language together or other. Yes, yes.
Yeah. I mean, in the trans community, we've seen that, like we used to call each other trannies, way back in the day, and now that's more of a derogatory term, and we use the term transgender and non-binary and gender non-conforming, and um, so there's other examples outside of just HIV and public health of how language does kind of evolve and transform, and even terms that we ourselves use have to be checked as we move forward.
I agree. I agree. I did see a comment from Helen earlier too. They said that she saw a post yesterday. Some healthcare providers at least dressed like one. She said I can spot an AIDS patient as soon as they walk in. I was so pissed. It pissed me off looking at comments, and I had to ask her if they look like her. Dang. I think I saw the same video too, and in that video it was a girl. She said how to tell you can tell how an AIDS patient is dressed, how they walk in, or something like that. It was very stigmatizing. It was very, but I think the point she was trying to make is that you can't look at someone and tell. But the whole video, it just was done not the best.
Mhm.
it opened up the space for people to get into the comment section to say all of these crazy and outlandish things. But we know that in like AIDS patient, like what is it? When I think of an AIDS patient, I think of someone who is really, really sick and who is in the hospital.
Yeah.
I don't think of people like us. People that are like, thriving and well. An AIDS patient sounds like, I don't know. I don't know, you may be sick. You may be sick. And I know sometimes that's the only language that people feel like they have access to. But if they
Mm.
continue to just stick closely to community and at least, listen to stories of people living with HIV, listen to how, we are asking to be referred to, I think that you could learn a lot that
Comes from fear too, because there, that term AIDS was used as a kind of fear tactic. When you really look at it back in the day, of like, that's the one thing you do not want, or you do not want to be, because like you said, AIDS, hospitalization, death. That was like the kind of way that it went years ago, before we have the medications that we do now have available. And so people using that term is like it's tied into their fear, you know. And like you said, once that person starts to talk more about talk more with people that have HIV living with them, that kind of lessens that fear, and kind of replaces it with education.
Mhm. I was seeing comments, and Lynette says she left a doctor who used that term 3 years ago. Guess that's AIDS. And then AIDS patient reminds me of the Philadelphia movie Highly Stigmatized.
Mm,
Yes, and that was not my experience, like living with HIV. So then it makes me like, at the beginning, I can remember the first time I walked into one of these appointments, like start othering myself. Like, even though we're all in here for the same thing, I'm somehow different than you over there because I don't, I'm not an AIDS patient. Like, I'm not that. Like, I have HIV. Somehow it made it different, how we were navigating this, although we're depending on the same doctors, the same treatment to keep us well. And that language did that for me. Or like, oh, this is real big for me. The people around me. So I think that like some of my community who is not living with HIV, if they're talking to me, they watch their language. So if they're talking to me or they're talking about me, but let it be somebody else that they know that's living with HIV. And as soon as that person pissed them off, the first thing they go to
mm,
is,
mm.
"Oh, you all sick, such and such." I'm like, "Yo, so do y'all feel that way about me too? Y'all ain't never said it, but do y'all? Hey,
Yeah.
wait, do y'all not realize that I am also living with, and to see the first things that you go to. So now that has me questioning this all through the words that are being chosen to be used. Is like, do you care about me? Do you really understand? Do you think lowly of me? It's a lot of questions that I don't think people would be ready to. I don't know if I would be ready to hear the answer, honestly. So I probably never asked.
Well, we see that a lot. We see that with racist people. There's racist people that have that one black person where it's like, well, I like you, you know, but I don't like black people, type of thing. And so, um, just know that your proximity to someone doesn't automatically erase the stigma that that person has for certain groups of community.
Mhm, mhm. Oh, it is deep. And then like to see how The racist piece, they be trying to hide it, but you can't hide it all the time. So then show up in spaces, and I'm like thinking that you're a person that cares about folks like me. I'm thinking that because you serve women living with HIV, that that might come from the hood. You serving all these folks that, but then I get you by yourself and you use language like I don't know. You say something where like do women living with HIV read research journals? Get questioned in a way like that. So you use your language then to now I'm questioning the entire relationship. Yo, you said that you care about people like me. And how dare you ask a question such as do women live in, because right there I have now used your words to make a decision in myself of how you care about people that look like
Mm-hmm.
it, and that
Mm-hmm.
and it don't make me trust you, and I kind of need to trust you in order to continue to receive my care from you.
Yeah. Yeah. Take away that living with HIV. How does that sound? Do women read research journals? Like,
I've never even considered that. Yeah, that sounds silly.
yeah.
Oh, okay. Thank you. Microaggressions are not micro. Oh, and why race matters. Thank you, Olivia.
Mm-hmm. Most of the time they're macro.
Yes, yes, yes. And the language use as well. Okay, so I know we're talking a lot about like just the use of it, but like what tools and resources can be available? Like, say I'm a provider who wants to use, more inclusive language or language that is more acceptable amongst those it being used about. Or I am a woman living with HIV who wants to learn better language. I see a lot of fact sheets and resources coming in the comment section from the Well Project, but just as like, what would you use?
Well, first off, what I would do is talk to someone that's living with HIV. Get to know what type of language they use, what type of language they feel that you shouldn't use. I think that's the best part of learning when you're learning from someone with a lived experience. Also, yeah, like the Well Project is doing a survey that they have some fact sheets of like these are the terms that you can use, these are terms to avoid, and there's a lot of that type of education out there. If you don't have the opportunity to personally speak, one on one with someone who's living with HIV, then you can just do a Google search and find some things. That's not the end all be all of it, though. If you're really invested, you know, um, join a webinar, with people living with HIV, and take a note on the language that they're using. Spread more of that information when you're talking with your group of friends or with your family. Check them when they're using a term that you've learned is not a term that you should use. Like, well, actually, we use it. You should use this term, and this is why. Because I talked to my friend that's living with HIV, and they described on how that term make them feel XYZ, and humanize it. I think that's humanizing things and humanizing people is what this is all about. Because what language does is compartmentalize people into boxes that they don't necessarily fit into.
I wholeheartedly agree. Because once you just say HIV, then people make so many assumptions on how how and you know what, and I'm all like, I'm at a point in my advocacy. I'm trying to come up with content right now around this. Like my advocacy has changed because of those around me. Like I've evolved as the language that I've used is has evolved, and now I'm not coming out. Especially because I see it pisses people off. I'm not coming out and telling you my diagnosis story. No, all you need to know is that I'm living with HIV, and that I'm an advocate, and this is how you can prevent an HIV diagnosis, and this is how you can navigate with one. Like I'm no longer, because I see how that is feeding, and I've learned. Like I've been able to touch the stove and feel how it's hot. How me going into detail, and I did that more freely at the beginning of my advocacy. I would talk, but what more do you need to know than the fact that I am living with HIV in order for you to prevent your own HIV diagnosis? Because I don't want to contribute to you being able to put me or anyone else into a box, so that really does you, those that are not living with HIV, a disservice, because then now you might not think that you need to go get that test because you think that I was doing something so differently than what you were. And it might make that person who's living with HIV, who acquired the virus through a relationship or through something, might make them feel bad. So no, 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 no.
Mhm.
Being
We
more
don't, when
go.
we hear someone that has cancer, we don't automatically say, well, how did you find out about it? Where in your body is the cancer? But we just take whatever information that person is willing to give us, and because we know that that's private, to that individual. But with all the stigma of HIV, we feel like we are entitled to more of that person's information and more of that person's life story.
And what is that? Like, why is that? Why do, like, I feel like I've given you enough. Like, we've given enough to share that much. Like, where does the entitlement come from? Where does the dehumanization come in? At what point was it? Is it the fact that you have an STD or an STI? Is it the fact that it is this specific one? What is it? And that space right there is the space that I want to sit in and like put my foot down. We don't owe y'all nothing, but we deserve all of the respect.
Hmm.
Let's see if there are any comments coming up. Not, yeah, I'm not seeing anything. So I want to know from you and hear an answer. What role do providers and advocates play in changing the narrative? Like, how can we all work together to help make changes, to see faster progress, a progress that feels good to the communities that we're serving?
Well, providers just need to set the f up. Like that's just straight up. Just your 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 job is to care for people, and if you're not using the right type of language to make that person present and take care of themselves in the most positive way possible, then you're not doing your job as a health provider. So make sure you educate yourself, even though language may not be a required topic, in order to get your license or get your degree. Make it so within your mind, because that's the way that you're going to retain clients. That's the way that you're going to stop complaints to the medical boards, and things like that. If we want to put it beyond just humanizing someone, it'd just be better to be educated, on those things. As advocates, I think we're doing our best. I think we need to work more on tracking the evolution of languages. Like you had used the examples of Cyril Discordant or dandelions, and just learning new terms and learning terms that need to be let go. As we move. So keeping yourself updated. Um, and also realizing that you don't need to be the educator for the educators. Do it when you feel the need or the urge or the want to, but don't think that just because you're living with HIV that you're the person that has to educate a health provider on what stigmatized language is and what good language is. That's on that health provider in order to do so. You can call them out and let them know. I think that's one thing that we need to do. You said this earlier that you just let some things go. And I guess to truly be an advocate, we have to not let some things go, and actually call it out so that person can be called in whatever way in which they can be in order to stop using language that hurts people.
Mhm. So it take like a group of us because it get tiresome. It get tiresome. I'm tired of damn advocating for every dang body, everything. So, but like this, it was one meeting that we was sitting in. It was me, Kim, and Krista, and like we're sitting in the audience, and the amount of times at this international meeting that they just sit there, infected, 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 infected. Like God, dang, they won't just this their most favorite word. So, we're all sitting there cringing and stuff. And it took Kim for her to be able to raise her hand and to be able to call that out. So I'm like, okay, whew, got my sister I could lean on in this moment. And then, somebody else picked the ball up at another moment. So maybe it's more a game. Like we playing the game together and I throw the ball to you sometimes because it's a lot. And some people decide. I know. I'm thinking of my newer advocacy self, my younger advocacy CC, and I'm like, oh, well, what's the problem with that? That's what we're called, right? Like we are HIV infected.
Mm,
It's when that do like, oh, that word is so cringy, but that's what I do. I am. No, and it took me reframing it like, yo, this is popping. This is popping. I'm glad that I had better language to describe myself, to describe the people around me, and it has definitely improved my relationship with HIV.
because
Uh,
I had to check myself too, because even though I wasn't using HIV infected, I would still say things of like I was infected with HIV and blah blah blah, like in whatever year or whatever type of experience. But no, it's that I acquired HIV. It's more of a positive term of what I have to use when I'm retelling my story. Being that my story has a lot of negativity already in it. It was more of an acquisition than an infection. You
mhm,
know, um, we want to use infection when it comes to actual biology of cells, but not about people.
mhm, mhm. I like that. Not people are like toxic. I feel that way. Like leave those type of darn words for the Instagram comment section because they real nasty over there.
They
Leave
are over
that for them. Not when I'm coming to receive my care. Like I want to feel safe, and one of the first ways that I know whether or not I'm safe is how you use language with me. Like those first gestures, and that's even down to the people at the front desk, because it could be the best doctor behind them doors, could be the nicest nurse, but if their front desk staff is popping off crazy at their mouth, I'm not gonna make it. I'm not gonna make it back
Mhm.
there. I'm not.
Already got a bad taste in my mouth.
I ain't coming back. And so I think that education on all the people that touch, people who are living with HIV, we need to do better in all of these spaces because they all make a difference. Whew, okay, so I had seen the comment come up about our evaluation for this episode. We have so many great things going on when it comes to our programming here at the Well Projects, and one of them is um, this. A Girl Like Me live. So in order to continue to make sure that we're responding to the needs of our community and doing the things that we are promising to set out to do, we just need to hear from you. Let us know how you enjoyed today's episode, if there was anything that we could do to improve it. So that link is there. And then, as we've been talking about language so much in this episode today, hopefully you've seen it somewhere out in community, but we're currently recruiting for a survey that is talking about this very exact thing, the impact of language in the healthcare for women living with HIV. If you have received a link to take it, please do. If you have not and you would like one, please contact any of us here at the Well Project. I'll give my email, Covin, Covin, at thewellproject.org, and we'll make sure to get that to you. We are about to put a link in the chat for that flyer. Because these things, we know that we can take what we find and show that language has a huge impact on how people access care and on how they feel about themselves. And sometimes it's the even want and desire to get up and keep moving. Like if I heard every day that I was a stupid, stinking, no good for nothing, piece of nothing, I might not want to get up that next day. Like why would, if I'm already dead, what good is my life worth even living? Sometimes I feel like that. A lot of times I feel like that with HIV too. Like just keeping the fight. It's not just the fight of the people on the outside of you. It's also the internal fight.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes, and I feel like it's ebbs and flows of this diagnosis. Sometimes I feel like I'm better than others. Sometimes I wish that it would all go away. But on none of those days do I want to be called a dirty, stinking HIV infected. Yeah.
Amen to that.
Okay. Yes, the link did make it into the chat for that
Perfect.
survey.
And I do want to say, like you had said about being with Krista and Kim, like when you're with other people, it empowers you more. And so, if you're someone that HIV is living with, and you're navigating life in solitary, then hit out the Well Project. We have online forums, and you can have conversations with people that have similar experiences to yourself. And if you want to do more, you can volunteer or donate to us through the website as well. So, there's a lot of ways in which you can help support or be supported.
Mhm. It's so important. Thank you. Like you were, one of our board of directors, but also being an advisor on the language, the survey, because some things I see it so often, like show up in the space, like, oh, I don't think nothing's wrong with the way that is said. And it's like, no, but this, can you think of like, no, this could be offensive. Like, okay, I see that, and I think that now I think I know the importance of having multiple people with this experience in one space. You can't just bring one person into the space and be like, we have a full representation of everybody, because some things that you may find offensive, I may not, or I might just need to be checked sometimes. Maybe I'm feeling a little bit of the internalized stigma and taking things too far. And I need another person that is living or navigating this life to be able to bounce that off of. Um, I'm gonna end with one question, and then we can just go on about our Merry Thursdays. I thank you all so much for being here with us once again. Make sure to take that eval. But what are your hopes for the future, like regarding language? Like where do you think we can go? Do you think we can find a like a place where women living with HIV feel safe in the language that is being used to describe them and that they're using to describe themselves?
Well, times today are hard. I would say that a lot of people's miseducation and hatred is bubbling up to the surface. But for every wave that passes, there's another wave coming, and so you have ebbs and flows to everything that's within the universe. So I have hope that we're coming to a time and place where we can humanize each other, and realize that all of us are just existing and doing what we can in this life that we have. And the more that we respect each other in that journey of life, the better life would be for everyone, across the globe. And so, um, yeah, get out of your own solitary mind, unlearn things that you may have learned that then you learn is not the right things. Realize that learning is also about unlearning, and that not everything has its focus within a fault of anyone. It's just all about how you continue from this point onward.
See, you just be sounding like a poet when you speak. That's what I just like. But that word humanizing humanity, it just like keeps coming up. And at the end of the day, that's what it's all about. I have thoroughly enjoyed you being here with me today. I
I
think that
enjoyed it
as
too.
we continue to have more of these conversations, that we can get where we're trying to go, even during these very rough and hard times. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today for our 36th episode of A Girl Like Me Live. Look out, keep an eye out for information on our November episode. And we hope that you have a great day. Bye, y'all.
Bye.